Dearest friends, I'm sharing here with you the movement of the dark light rhythm using this very one-dimensional surface. You can see the black and you can see lines on it and you can see the white. And nature, everything in nature moves through this dark light rhythm. And so what is dark and what is light, and how does life move through this cyclically, and how does every rhythm fall on it? I'm going to show it illustrated. So when I say dark, I mean everything in the dark is waiting in potentiality. Everything, all the potency, infinite potency exists in the dark. And that's what I mean, the black, deep dark, which can consume, devour everything. The black hole, that is consciousness, that is space, that is Shiva. And on the exact mirror opposite of the black, and this what you see, that line in the center, you can call it the peak. That is the infinite potentiality. It is this infinity right there. And on the exact mirror opposite in the white is blossomed, blossoming of this potentiality. So again, there is a peak here. It is infinity. What can happen here is infinity. And this is the doing. This is where you see this entire universe dancing, moving, creating, manifesting. So Shakti in Shiva, this dynamic energy with all colors and taking shape and form. So this movement is forever happening. And how is this happening? So it's happening this way. From the being space, life begins to grow, learning. So it is a growing out, learning and moving out, like a seed that sprouts. And what happens when it grows out? It learns, it is picking up pace, it is slowly, growth means life. Activity slowly beginning, and as activity begins, as growth happens, what happens is there is expansion, there is branching out. And in the expansion and in the branching out, we experience relationship with the other. We know connection. We know our own autonomy, our own authority. That starts getting refined. Our own individuation starts happening. And then it reaches peak here in the light cycle. And then what happens is once you reach this point, there is a threshold. And then again there is a need to, once you have expanded, now there is a need to grow. Again there is growth happening, but it is inwards. It happens because of reflection. It happens because of letting go, because nothing stays forever. All that has met you also needs to leave you. And there is an unlearning happening. And there is a moving in, from outward into the world, moving back home. So this is where the pace needs to slow down. Universe slows down, pace slows down, and everything needs to die. Go back into the dark for again, waiting for the next potentiality to emerge and to be realized. So this cycle is forever happening. And what does this do? This brings depth, it brings groundedness, belonging, it brings knowing, authenticity, and there is a reset, rest, so life can again begin. So this process is forever in motion in the dark light rhythm, from being to doing, then reaching the threshold of doing and again going back. And when we feel stuck, when we stay in waiting for too long, when we stay in doing too long, when we are stuck and we do not know how to shift from waiting to doing, or we do not know how to slow down and rest. In all these places, especially this quadrant and this quadrant are the gray areas. If you're fully in waiting, fully rested, asleep, dead, there is no issues. If you're fully lighted, there's no darkness, you're fully alive and here and present and doing, there is no conflict. The confusion comes here. As you are growing, as you are learning, as you're moving out, there is fear of uncertainty, what life brings, there is fear of the unknown, all that, because this is neither fully lit nor is it fully dark. There is confusion. Similarly, as we start going back home, we again reach into that same space. Will I be forgotten? Will I miss out? Can I let it go? What happens if I let it go? Will it again ever come back and meet me? So all these fears of the past and the future, loom. Life continues in this way. So this is the very basic dark light rhythm of life, of nature. Every rhythm can now map on it, and that's what I'm going to show you, how every other rhythm maps on this very basic rhythm. On this rhythm, I also wanted to show you few other words, polarities, how they show up. Like yin is in the dark rhythm, and yang, the masculine rhythm, is connected to light. Yin is connected to dark, and yang is connected to light. Yin is connected to depth. It sits right here. And yang is connected to life. Yin is feminine and yang is masculine. Yin is connected to rest. Deep rest comes from the dark, from the feminine, by surrendering to the feminine. In death, sleep is akin to death. And then light brings expansion, growth, and activity. So rest and activity, and we have depth here. So this is the dark and light rhythm. The dark feminine brings depth, and light Shakti brings expansion. Light, yang, life. So both are needed. Life is not about feminine. If we are only in feminine, then we would be forever in waiting, in subservience, in being. We will not be able to move, get up and walk and do our bidding in this world. And for that, we need the masculine will, this ego separation, which allows us to step out of home, go into the world, do what we need to do, get active, and then at the same time learn how to let it all go. And know that this is a cycle. This is cyclic, not linear here. So this will all come back. What goes around comes around on the cycle. Everything that has ever been is here. On this rhythm, in this universe, it exists. So these are some of the words that I want to have it at the center core as I bring all the other rhythms around it. So on this dark light rhythm, there are 4 quadrants. The being or the waiting quadrant, the being to doing quadrant, the doing quadrant, blossomed doing quadrant, and again doing to being, activity to rest quadrant. And you can see that there are 8 stops on this. 8, you can see those lines, right? Those lines. There are 8 points, markers, which I call it as pit stops. They actually mark the entry into a particular quadrant, the peak of that quadrant, and also the exit out of these quadrants. These are the 8 metamorphic pit stops. And these pit stops are very potent, and almost in every culture, every earth-based culture, every indigenous culture, these gateways, these pit stops are entered through ritual, ceremony, in every aspect, so that life can continue to flow through the dark and light rhythm and not get stuck anywhere. So I am going to use the seed cycle as an example of these metamorphic pit stops. So of course everything begins in the dark. So that's our beginning, deep rest, where everything is composed, disintegrated and dead, and yet waiting in potentiality. So this phase from the second pit stop is where we plant the seed. But before we plant the seed is the time to actually prepare the vessel or prepare the ground. So that's what happens here, preparing the ground. And once the ground is prepared, well, how do you prepare the ground? When you have to plant the seed, you take off the weeds, you till, you ground, you plow, then you put manure, you put fertilizers, you moisten the ground. So there's a lot of activity that happens there. And then the second metamorphic pit stop is where you plant the seed in the ground. And once you plant the seed, then the entire journey happens underground. You do not know what's happening. You can put water depending upon the potentiality of that seed. It sprouts. Yeah, and the gardener only has to wait, can only wait. And when the seed even sprouts, its visibility is here. You see it on the third pit stop. You see that seed is sprouted when there is outward visualization of it. But actually the work has happened underground. It's the root that shows up first, goes underground, and as the root plants itself, grounds itself, the seed on the top begins to sprout outwards towards light. It gains activity, it deepens, and it is sprouting. So that is where the seed shows up. And once the seeds sprout, it is very delicate. Then you have to really care for it. And as the plant grows, this is where you can see the tree is rising up, the leaves are appearing, small shoots are appearing in the plant, and it is growing, it is learning, it has to withstand risk, it has to withstand change, it has to withstand attacks on itself. And slowly, when it survives, is the next metamorphic pit stop, when the buds start appearing in the seed. Yeah, the seed has now, the plants has gained enough strength, it has received enough nourishment, so there are buds that appear on it. And once the bud appears, it's still, the job is not done. It is to recommit itself, it has to gain back its strength and its direction. So this is the journey of renewing your commitment, reinforming your purpose, reinforming why am I doing this, where am I going, in terms of a human psyche's journey. And then the bud blossoms into a flower. And now the flower has to become a fruit, and it cannot do it. There are some plants which have both the sexes in it, but for most fruits, pollination is required. So now the flower is at the beck and call of another. So it needs to prepare itself. So it might emit its fragrance, it might send its attractiveness, it might attract in different ways in nature for its specific agent. Not everything can pollinate everything. So there are bees, or there are different kinds of ways that different plants, fruits, trees, they become fruits. So that pollination, this is about relationship, interaction, the other. So there's a lot of stuff, drama. This whole section is about drama. So then the fruit starts developing. Yeah, the buds start becoming, the flowers start blossoming into fruits. And once all the fruits have come, now they need to be eaten, they need to be devoured, tasted, so their journey, in human being, if we are human, then we pick it, we eat it, we harvest it. That's what happens. If not, animals eat it. Whatever may be, it is already, the minute it has fruition, its journey is towards its end. It is moving towards ending. It is moving towards disintegrating, dying. It's already, when it reaches its potential, it has to. The lesson, so the So even for a farmer who grows crops, once the yield has come, from here to here again, there is a journey. Natural disasters can happen, fire can happen, everything can get destroyed. Here again, he learns surrender. He needs to reflect. So in the olden days, they would give gratitude during this time. They would pray to nature. They would offer the first harvest to nature, to animals, to life. Yeah, and then once the harvesting is done, you need to learn the lessons. And in some in the agricultural cycle, it shows up as saving the seeds. You need to save the seeds, the best seeds. What are the best seeds in this crop that needs to be saved for future planting? And again, then everything else is allowed to disintegrate, decomposed, it becomes something else, transformed, and it moves in this way. So again, then comes the next cycle, and again the preparation begins and the seed moves. If a seed is never planted, it just stays there. The entire tree is in the seed, in the potentiality of the seed. So these are the 8 metamorphic pit stops on the dark light rhythm. There's also a 9th pit stop that can emerge like a black hole anywhere on these metamorphic pit stops, and a gateway can open up and powerful revelations and reveals can happen. It is very impromptu. In deep surrender, that gateway opens. So this is the movement of all of life in nature, and each of these 4 phases are also connected to elements. And these 4 elements that dominate these 4 phases are the earth element, which are represented by a stone here, and then you have water element, which is in the being to doing phase, and then you have the fire element, which is light, when to see, to transform, to create, to manifest, you need the fire element. So the fire element dominates in this phase, and for everything to go down, you need the air element to bring it all down, to let it go up, to release is the air element. So there I have this little incense here that is through fire, the matter is being burned and it is moving up. So this movement, and it's not like this is only the element that is dominant. All the other elements also exist. Earth brings heaviness, so it is able to, the body is able to sleep, is able to disintegrate, completely become earth. And water brings movement from inertia. Movement comes through the water element, and fire allows one thing to change into another. So this is the fire element, and of course, again, to bring expansion, to release things. So this movement, so these are the elements that dominate these 4 phases. And now we will look at what happens in a day-night cycle.